Virgin Mafia boss. Came to collect my family's debt. He took me as payment instead. A Virgin Mafia boss shows up at midnight to collect a $3.2 million debt. He doesn't take the money, he takes the daughter. 6 months in his world. No touching without consent. One rule, he protects her from everyone. But someone wants her gone. A rival crew stalks her. A sniper's bullet hits the window. And there's a secret. This debt looks like a trap. He's deadly to the world, gentle only to her. She starts to want the man who swore he'd never be with anyone. Then a fake video drops. It looks like he plans to trade her for peace. Worse, there's a traitor inside his own house. She's taken for a dockside bride ceremony. He has minutes to get her out, or lose her forever. So when love and power collide, will he make a deal with enemies, or burn the city to keep the girl who was never a debt? The rain hammers against the window like angry fists, matching Elena's thundering heartbeat. Her mother's gentle snores barely rise above the melodramatic whispers of the telenovela, the blue TV light casting shadows across their cramped living room. Elena's fingers trace the worn edges of the contract, the paper still warm from the printer. Dante Moretti stands in her doorway, a dark sentinel carved from marble and menace. His suit, despite the downpour, remains impeccable, not a drop of rain daring to cling to the fabric. His presence fills the tiny apartment, making the walls seem to shrink around them. "Take what you need," he says, his voice low and measured. "Nothing more." Elena moves through her bedroom methodically, her hands surprisingly steady as she packs. Each item represents a lifeline. Her passport, freedom, student ID, normalcy, piano scores, sanity, phone charger, connection. The duffel bag feels too light for what's essentially her life's ransom. Behind her, Dante shifts slightly. "I'll turn around while you change." True to his word, he faces the wall as Elena swaps her worn pajamas for jeans and a sweater. The rustle of fabric seems too loud in the weighted silence. She notices how he keeps his hands clasped behind his back, a soldier at ease but still ready. "Why the bodega?" Elena asks, zipping up her bag. "Why not just take the money from Ramon?" She needs to understand the man who now holds her future in his carefully manicured hands. "Your stepfather's debts go beyond money," Dante replies, still facing away. "The bodega is a strategic location. 3 rival families have been trying to claim this block." He pauses. "Your mother's safety was never guaranteed, even before tonight." Elena watches him place the envelope under the remote, his movements precise. The cash isn't charity, it's insurance, both for her mother and for Elena's compliance. Her mother stirs on the couch, mumbling something about grocery lists. Elena kneels beside her, adjusting the blanket. "Mama, I'll be back tomorrow to check on you," she whispers, knowing she can't risk explaining more right now. The medic has already programmed the medication schedule into multiple phones, hers, her mother's, and one for the guard who will be stationed outside. "We need to move," Dante says quietly. "My presence here has already been noticed." Elena shoulders her bag, taking one last look at the apartment. The peeling wallpaper, the collection of Saint candles on the windowsill, the stack of medical bills held down by a crystal butterfly, her whole world contained in 600 square feet. They descend the narrow stairwell, their footsteps echoing off the walls. Dante moves with liquid grace, one hand hovering near the small of her back without touching, close enough to catch her if she falls, far enough to honor the contract's boundaries. The distance between them crackles with unspoken tensions. Protector and prisoner, savior and jailer, future pretend fiancé, and unwilling bride. Through the glass door, Elena sees the SUVs waiting like black beasts, their engines purring. Rain creates curtains of silver, and for a moment she feels suspended between 2 worlds, the known past and an uncertain future. "The first vehicle has medical supplies for your mother," Dante explains. "The second will transport us. My men will maintain a perimeter around the building 24/7. Elena pauses at the bottom of the stairs, her hand on the door handle. "And where exactly are you taking me?" "My residence in Upper Manhattan. You'll have your own suite, secured access to a piano, and transportation to your classes." His tone suggests he's anticipated her needs, mapped out her life with tactical precision. A crack of thunder makes Elena jump. Dante's hand twitches toward her, but stops short, respecting the invisible boundary between them. "Your mother's first therapy appointment is scheduled for Tuesday," he continues. "Dr. Sarah Chen. She specializes in trauma and chronic illness management." The thoroughness of his preparations unsettles Elena. How long has he been watching them? Planning this? She thinks of chess pieces being moved into position, of strings being pulled by unseen hands. The door feels heavy as Elena pushes it open. The rain immediately assaults her, cold drops sliding down her neck. She hesitates, one foot on the threshold. "Remember," Dante says, his voice carrying despite the storm. "You have my word. Everything in writing. 6 months, and you're free to walk away." Elena steps into the rain, her chin high. "Your word means nothing to me yet, Mr. Moretti. The contract does." A ghost of something, respect, amusement, flickers across his face. He signals to his men, and the SUV doors open in synchronization. The night wraps around them like a cloak as they move toward the vehicles, their shoes splashing through puddles that reflect the neon signs above. This is how Elena Reyes's life changes, not with the bang of gunfire or the slash of a knife, but with the whisper of pen on paper and the quiet click of a car door opening at 1:40 a.m. while her mother sleeps unknowing above, and the rain washes away the last traces of her old life. The SUV glides through rain-slicked streets, city lights painting Elena's face in shifting patterns of neon and shadow. She sits with careful posture, maintaining precise inches between herself and Dante. The leather seats smell new, and the vehicle's quiet purr speaks of expensive engineering. "Tell me about Ramon," she says, watching Dante's reflection in the window, rather than looking at him directly. "When did he first come to you?" 3 months ago." Dante's voice is clinical, detached. "He approached through intermediaries, claiming he needed capital for expansion plans. The numbers didn't add up, but that's common with desperate men. And now it's clear this was orchestrated. The debt accumulation was too rapid, too systematic." He turns slightly toward her, his profile sharp against the passing lights. "He won't be allowed to endanger you or your mother again. That's all you need to know." Elena absorbs this, noting what he doesn't say about Ramon's fate. The city slides by outside, familiar streets becoming increasingly affluent until they reach a towering glass structure. The SUV descends into a private garage where men in suits stand at strategic points, earpieces gleaming. Dante leads her to a private elevator, placing his palm on a sleek scanner. Elena catalogs everything, cameras tracking their movement, guards rotating positions with military precision, and a German shepherd by the door who whines softly as they pass. The elevator opens directly into the penthouse. Marble floors stretch beneath her feet, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcase the city's glittering expanse. Dante moves with the efficiency of someone who never wastes motion, showing her the layout. "Your suite," he indicates a door adjacent to his master suite. "Private bathroom, walk-in closet, reinforced windows." He continues the tour, a shared kitchen with gleaming appliances, a living room she suspects has never seen casual use. The music room stops her breath. A black Steinway baby grand dominates the space, its surface reflecting the city lights. "You play?" she asks, fingers hovering over the keys without touching. "No, I bought it for silence." At her questioning look, he elaborates. Empty rooms echo. Music fills space better than furniture. The panic room is next, a steel door concealed behind a bookshelf. He holds out a slim wristband. "This grants you access. 24-hour monitoring, separate ventilation system, secure communication line." He doesn't attempt to put it on her, instead extending it in his palm. Elena takes it, noting how carefully he avoids skin contact, and fastens it herself. In the kitchen, Dante prepares herbal tea with the same precision he applies to everything. Steam rises between them as he outlines the rules. "Your phone remains yours, but location services stay active. 2 of my men will attend your classes, 2 rows behind. Marco is your designated driver. He's ex-military, thoroughly vetted." He pauses, meeting her eyes. "Most importantly, you have complete autonomy over physical contact. No one in this house will touch you without explicit permission. If anyone tries, they answer to me." Elena wraps her hands around the warm mug. "My mother's therapy? Dr. Chen will see her Monday at 9. I've arranged weekly sessions and medication delivery." He slides a tablet across the counter, showing a detailed schedule. "Grocery delivery comes tomorrow morning. The kitchen is stocked, but if you have preferences, add them to the list." Elena pulls out her phone, typing quickly to Rosa. "I'm safe. Semester continues. We'll explain later." She places it face down, the click against marble, unnaturally loud in the pre-dawn quiet. Hours later, Elena lies in her new bed, listening to the city's muffled heartbeat. Sleep eludes her despite the luxurious mattress and silk sheets. A distant siren wails and fades, reminding her of the world beyond these gilded walls. Thirst drives her to the kitchen. The marble is cool under her bare feet as she navigates by city light. A covered bowl on the stove catches her attention. Caldo, still warm, with a yellow post-it note. Eat. D. As she reaches for a glass, movement catches her eye. A red dot flickers across the window, gone so quickly she almost doubts she saw it. Just a reflection from some distant tower, she tells herself, but her hand trembles slightly as she fills the glass. Back in bed, Elena repeats her contract terms like a mantra. 6 months. No touching without consent. Weekly therapy for her mother. Safe return guaranteed. The words should comfort her, but in the pre-dawn darkness, they feel as fragile as the promises they represent. She stares at the ceiling, wondering if Dante is awake in his adjacent suite, if he's reviewing security footage or making plans she can't imagine. The wristband feels heavy on her arm, both protection and tether. Outside, the city continues its endless cycle of light and shadow, unaware that Elena Reyes's world has shifted on its axis. The herbal tea's warmth lingers in her stomach, mixing with the uncertainty of her situation. Her phone sits silent on the nightstand, Rosa's unread response waiting until morning. For now, Elena lies still, counting breaths, feeling the weight of choices made and paths not taken, while Manhattan's lights paint patterns on her walls. At precisely 7:30 a.m., a gentle knock echoes through Helena's room. She's already awake, having dozed fitfully between bursts of alertness. Your driver will have you at campus by 9, Dante's voice carries through the door, measured and clear. He doesn't attempt to enter, maintaining the boundaries he'd established. Elena pulls on dark jeans and a black sweater, the familiar clothes a comfort against the luxury surrounding. She slides her feet into worn sneakers, checking her student ID before slipping it into her pocket alongside the panic wristband. Her reflection in the mirror looks the same, but everything else has changed. The elevator ride down is silent. 2 guards, one older with salt and pepper hair, one younger with watchful eyes, maintain their distance, positioning themselves at opposite corners. Their shoes gleam, their suits impeccable, but Elena notices how their hands never stray far from their jackets. Campus feels surreal in its normalcy. Students rush past with coffee cups and backpacks, oblivious to the weight of her new reality. Elena heads straight to Professor Martinez's office, rehearsing her carefully edited explanation for needing a paper extension. Family emergency, she says, the words not quite a lie. I'll have it to you by Friday. The professor nods sympathetically, and Elena thanks her, already turning to leave. That's when she notices him. A man on a bench outside, holding yesterday's newspaper. The same page stays open as students stream past. 1 minute passes, 5, 10. He hasn't turned the page once. Elena catalogs the detail, adding it to her growing mental file of surveillance markers. Knowledge is power, even if it's just knowing who's watching. Back at the penthouse by noon, she finds a paper bag on the kitchen counter. The familiar logo of her neighborhood empanada shop brings an unexpected ache of homesickness. Inside, her usual order waits. 2 spinach, 1 chicken, still warm. Beside the bag lies a typed schedule, precise as everything else, in Dante's world. Her mother's therapy appointment with Dr. Chen is confirmed for Monday, 9 a.m. Below that, a list of medications with refill dates. At the bottom, a simple note. Rent processed automatically, all utilities included. When Dante emerges from his office, Elena seizes the moment. Why offer me a contract with so many protections? She asks directly. Most men in your position wouldn't bother. He studies her, his posture perfectly still. Control is my doctrine, he says finally. I do not take anything I cannot keep safe. Protection and consent aren't weaknesses. They're foundations. At 4, Marco arrives for her security drill. The security chief's movements are efficient, professional, as he shows her the emergency routes. Primary stairwell here, he indicates, leading her through the fire door. Secondary exit through the service corridor on the east side. Panic room can be accessed from both your suite and the main living area. Elena nods, memorizing each turn while secretly marking waypoints on her phone's map. The service corridors particularly interest her. Staff routes, less monitored perhaps, a possible test of her boundaries. After sunset, she makes her move. The service hallway is dim, utilitarian, a sharp contrast to the penthouse's luxury. Elena makes it down 2 floors before a familiar voice stops her. Elena, Dante, stands at the landing below, his expression not angry but weighted with something heavier. Come with me. He leads her up to the roof. The city spreads out before them, a tapestry of lights and shadows. Dante hands her a pair of binoculars, directing her gaze to a sedan parked across the street. 2 men, he says quietly. They picked up your trail at campus. He adjusts her view to another car near her mother's building. 2 more there. They're waiting for exactly this, for you to run, to make yourself vulnerable. The reality of her situation settles like lead in her stomach. These aren't Dante's men. These are predators waiting for her to stumble into their reach, to use her against both Dante and her mother. Back in the penthouse, the city lights sparkle through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Elena stands 3 steps behind Dante, processing the roof's revelations, when it happens. The sound is barely a whisper, a soft phut that seems impossible given its effect. A spiderweb of cracks appears in the window, spreading outward from a single point. Time seems to stretch like taffy as Elena processes what she's seeing. Dante moves with liquid speed, his body covering hers as he takes them both to the floor. "Blinds down," he commands, his voice sharp but controlled. "Full lockdown. Now." The automatic blinds descend with a mechanical whir, plunging the room into darkness broken only by recessed lighting. Alarms blare through the building, and Elena remembers the siren from last night with sudden, stark clarity. Not a random city sound after all, but a warning she hadn't known to heed. Under the shelter of Dante's body, Elena feels his heartbeat, steady, controlled. Even now, his cologne mingles with the smell of gunpowder that somehow fills the air despite the silencer. The crack in the window seems to mock the illusion of safety she'd been building, reminding her that in Dante's world, protection comes with a price, and danger wears many faces. The panic room's steel walls press close as Elena's heart hammers against her ribs. Through the array of security monitors, she watches Dante's men sweep the building perimeter, their movements precise and practiced. The main screen shows the roofline where the shot originated, now swarming with dark figures carrying tactical gear. Dante stands in the command center outside, his presence radiating controlled fury as he issues orders. His voice carries through the intercom, cold and clinical. "Sweep the north face. Check every possible angle. I want that position mapped." Gone is any trace of the man who'd shown her the piano room hours ago. A gentle knock at the panic room door makes her start. Through the camera feed, she sees Dante waiting, his posture deliberately non-threatening. "Elena, may I come in?" She appreciates the choice he's giving her even now. Yes. The heavy door whispers open on hydraulics. Dante enters but maintains his distance, gesturing to the bank of screens. "I need to show you something." Security footage rewinds on the main monitor. A neighboring terrace, 3 buildings over, comes into focus. The timestamp shows 9:13 p.m. as a figure in black sets up, takes the shot, then vanishes within seconds. "Professional," Dante notes clinically, but not top tier. They wanted to be seen. He switches to another feed, the car that had followed her from campus. Alvarado Cartel. They're pushing up from South Florida, testing boundaries. His jaw tightens. What's unusual is their specific interest in you, when your stepfather's debt was to me. "You think the debt was bait?" Elena asks, connecting the dots. "Increasingly likely." Dante's expression darkens. "Ramon may have sold information about your movements, your habits, things a crew would need to plan an acquisition." At 10:30, after the all-clear, Elena returns to her room. The familiar weight of fear sits in her chest, but she refuses to let it paralyze her. Instead, she finds herself drawn to the baby grand in the music room. Her fingers find the keys by muscle memory, beginning the scales she learned as a child. C major, G major, D major. Each progression a small act of defiance against the chaos. The familiar patterns steady her racing thoughts. A slight movement catches her eye. Dante stands in the doorway, hands clasped behind his back, watching with an unreadable expression. "I bought it for the silence," he says quietly, nodding toward the piano. "The space between notes. My father." He pauses, something dark flickering across his features. He never allowed silence. Every moment had to be filled with noise, with movement, with proof of power. Morning arrives too quickly. At 8 a.m., instead of the usual driver, Dante himself waits by a plain charcoal sedan. "Change of pattern," he explains as Elena slides into the passenger seat. "First rule of soft security." As they navigate morning traffic, he begins what she realizes is an impromptu security briefing. "Never sit with your back to doors," he instructs, his tone matter-of-fact. "Leave rooms through different exits than you entered. If your hair's down and you think you might need to run, put it up immediately. Elena repeats each instruction aloud, committing them to memory. Different exits than entrances. Hair up for quick movement. Back to the wall. She catches his slight nod of approval in her peripheral vision. That evening, reports filter in about the sniper's escape route. The trail goes cold at an abandoned parking lot where they'd left a burner car. Untraceable, professional work that only confirms Dante's suspicions about Alvarado's involvement. Dante immediately strengthens security around her mother's building, positioning teams in rotating shifts. Elena watches through the penthouse windows as unmarked vehicles take up strategic positions on the street below. Just after midnight, the weight of the day drives Elena to seek air. Still in her cotton pajamas, she steps onto the balcony. The city sprawls below, its lights twinkling with deceptive peace. The repaired window behind her shows no trace of the earlier violence, but she knows it's there. Like so much in Dante's world, danger lurks beneath smooth surfaces. She senses rather than hears Dante join her. True to form, he maintains a careful distance, positioning himself just beyond arm's reach. The night air carries the faint scent of his cologne. "It will get worse before it gets better," he says quietly, his eyes scanning the horizon. Alvarado won't stop at one attempt. Elena wraps her arms around herself, suppressing a shiver that has nothing to do with the temperature. "Why tell me that?" "Because you deserve the truth." He turns to face her fully. "And because you need to understand, whatever violence comes, it will never be directed at you. My protection means exactly that. I will destroy anything that threatens you, but my own darkness will never touch you." The city hums below them, a constant reminder of the world beyond this strange bubble they inhabit. Elena absorbs his words, understanding that this is both promise and warning. In Dante's world, violence is a tool, wielded with precision rather than passion. His protection means safety for her, but destruction for her enemies, and right now she's not sure how to feel about either. Dawn breaks over the city as Elena enters the penthouse gym at 7 a.m. Dante waits by the mirrored wall, his presence both commanding and carefully contained. The morning light casts long shadows across the training mats. "First lesson," he says, gesturing her closer to the mirror, using reflections to spot followers. He positions himself several feet behind her. "Watch the angles. Someone following will maintain the same distance, same pace. Their eyes will track you specifically." Elena studies the mirror, noting how Dante demonstrates different walking patterns. His movements are precise, educational rather than threatening. When he shows her how to use store windows and car mirrors as detection tools, his hands hover near her shoulders but never make contact. "The panic band," he continues, moving to the next lesson. "There's a raised button here." He indicates the spot without touching her wrist. "You can activate it without looking. Practice until it's muscle memory." They move to a door where Dante demonstrates how to create an impromptu barricade. "Thread a belt through the hinge side," he explains. "It buys crucial seconds." His voice remains steady, instructional, like a professor teaching physics rather than survival. Elena practices each technique repeatedly, asking questions, refining her movements. Dante's patience never wavers. When she successfully spots him in 3 different reflection angles, his approval shows only in a slight nod. At noon, Marco drives her to campus. The familiar buildings feel different now. Every corner holding potential threats she's learning to identify. Ahmed, a classmate from her music theory course, waves her over to his table in the library. "Group study session for the harmony exam," he asks, gesturing to the scattered notebooks and coffee cups. "We're covering chromatic modulation." Elena glances at Marco, who's already settling 2 tables away, appearing completely absorbed in a newspaper. She makes her decision. Normal life doesn't stop for danger. "Thanks," she says, sliding into an empty chair. "I could use help with the German 6th chords." The study session flows naturally. Discussion of chord progressions, shared complaints about practice rooms, plans for upcoming recitals. Marco maintains his distance, the perfect image of a disinterested relative killing time. At 3 p.m., Elena and Marco return to the penthouse garage. The elevator doors slide open and everything explodes into motion. 2 men surge forward. Alvarado's crew, she realizes with crystal clarity. Before they can reach her, Marco pulls her behind a concrete pillar. Dante emerges from the shadows like a ghost, his movements brutally efficient. He catches the first attacker's arm, twisting until bone snaps. The second man reaches for a weapon, but Dante is faster. A precise strike to the throat, a sweep of the legs, and both attackers lie groaning on the concrete, the The entire fight lasts 30 seconds. Elena's heart pounds as Dante's men secure the attackers for questioning. Her hands shake, but her voice stays steady when she says, "Your knuckles are bleeding." Upstairs in the kitchen, Elena retrieves the first aid kit. Dante sits perfectly still as she examines his hands. The bruising has already started to bloom across his knuckles, but his fingers remain elegant, controlled. She dabs antiseptic on the broken skin, conscious of his absolute stillness. "Why are you always so careful with me?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're capable of so much violence, but with me." "Because I chose restraint a long time ago," he answers, his eyes fixed on her hands as they tend his wounds. "And you deserve something gentler than my world." The evening settles around them like a blanket. Elena finds herself drawn to the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys before beginning to play. The melody comes unbidden, raw and untamed, a storm-swept heartbeat in musical form. She doesn't look at Dante, but she feels his presence, sees him settle into a chair from the corner of her eye. He listens like a man in confession, forearms braced on his knees, head slightly bowed. The music fills the space between them, saying things neither can voice aloud. When the last note fades, Elena rises from the piano bench. Her heart thunders in her chest as she crosses the space between them. Dante remains perfectly still, watching her approach with an intensity that should frighten her but doesn't. At 11:45 p.m., she leans forward and presses her lips to his. The kiss is soft, deliberate, her choice, her tempo. She feels his sharp intake of breath, the tremendous effort of his restraint. When she pulls back, Dante's eyes are dark with want, but his voice remains steady as he asks, "Do you want to keep going?" "Not yet," she answers honestly. His smile is beautiful and painful at once. "Thank you for the line," he says quietly, rising from his chair. He walks to his room with measured steps, leaving both their doors ajar, a gesture of trust, of possibilities, of patience. The next morning dawns quiet and empty, the penthouse feeling larger without Dante's presence. Elena checks her phone, 8:55 a.m., and settles on the living room couch with her laptop for the video call with her mother. At exactly 9, her mother's face fills the screen, looking more rested than Elena remembers seeing her in months. "Mija, the new doctor is wonderful. She actually listens." Elena's shoulders relax slightly. "They filled all the prescriptions." "Yes, everything. The nice young man from the pharmacy even explained each one." Her mother holds up the organized pill container. "And look, they gave me this special box with alarms." "That's great, Mama." Elena watches her mother's movements, noting the steadier hands, the clearer eyes. "How are you sleeping?" "Better. The new medication helps." Her mother pauses, concern crossing her face. "But you, Elena, are you safe? Really safe?" Elena chooses her words carefully. "I'm okay, Mama. The apartment is secure, and I'm still attending classes." She doesn't mention the sniper, the garage fight, or the growing threat. After saying goodbye, Elena spreads her music theory notes across the kitchen counter. The familiar patterns of chord progressions and harmonic analysis ground her. She reheats leftover empanadas, the spicy aroma filling the kitchen as she works through practice exercises. Movement on one of the security monitors catches her eye. A dark sedan, the same one from campus, idles 3 blocks away, just visible from the penthouse's camera network. Elena marks the time and position just as Dante taught her. At 1 p.m., the elevator announces Dante's return. His expression is controlled, but Elena sees the darkness lingering behind his eyes, the slight tension in his jaw. "The men talked," he says, without preamble, accepting the coffee she offers. "They were promised a bride for Alvarado's son. Someone leaked information about our arrangement, twisted it into something else." Elena's hands tighten around her mug. "A bride? They're treating it like a traditional exchange." Dante's voice carries carefully contained anger. "Someone sold the story that your payment up for grabs." "My mother? Already handled. I've doubled security at her building. All deliveries will be personally verified." He meets her eyes. "No one touches either of you." Elena paces the kitchen, processing. The sedan's back, 3 blocks east. Dante nods, unsurprised. "They're getting bolder." By 6, Elena's nerves are raw. "Teach me to shoot," she demands, following Dante to his office. "No." His refusal is immediate but gentle. "A weapon without proper training becomes a liability. Your attackers will be armed and experienced. In a confrontation, they'll take the gun and use it against you." Instead, he leads her through the building's security systems. Here, he demonstrates. This kills power to specific zones. This triggers lockdown protocols. His hands hover near hers, showing without touching. They eat dinner in companionable silence, pasta with garlic bread that Elena insisted on making, needing the normalcy of cooking. Afterward, they sit in the living room, the city lights creating a false sense of peace beyond the windows. Tell me about your father, Elena says quietly. Why did you choose restraint? Dante is still for a long moment. My father treated intimacy like theater. Everything was a power play, a performance designed to prove dominance. His voice carries old wounds. He'd parade his lovers through our home, make spectacles of private moments. It was about control, about showing he could take whatever he wanted. Elena watches his face in the dim light. I saw what it did to people, how it broke them. He meets her gaze. I vowed never to be that man. He pauses. I've never taken a lover, not once. The confession hangs in the air between them. Elena processes this revelation, understanding now his careful distance, his absolute respect for boundaries. She reaches out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and touches his face with gentle fingers. Dante stays perfectly still under her touch, then carefully covers her hand with his own. I want you, he admits, voice rough, but I'll only take what you freely give when you're ready, not a moment before. The intensity of the moment breaks when Marco knocks and enters, holding a small, padded envelope. This came from your mother's storage unit, he tells Elena. Inside, she finds a locket from her childhood, silver with tiny roses engraved on the surface. When she shakes it gently, something rattles. Hidden in the locket's frame is a micro SD card. We'll examine it tomorrow, Dante says, already reaching for his phone to arrange for clean tech. When we can ensure it's safe. Elena closes her fingers around the locket, wondering what secrets from her past might be hidden in that tiny piece of technology, and why it was hidden in her mother's storage unit. The weight of it feels significant in her palm, another piece of a puzzle she's only beginning to understand. The morning sun streams through the penthouse windows as Vivi hunches over her laptop at the kitchen island, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The air-gapped computer whirs softly as she works to extract data from the micro SD card found in Elena's locket. Elena busies herself making coffee, the familiar ritual helping to steady her nerves. The rich aroma fills the kitchen as she places a mug beside Vivi, who barely looks up from her screen. This is interesting, Vivi mutters, pushing her glasses up her nose. We've got spreadsheets, lots of them, and emails. Going back years, she takes a sip of coffee. These companies here, they're connected to your father's old operations, Dante. Dante moves closer, studying the screen. Show me. Shell companies, all of them. But look at how they link to current Alvarado fronts. Vivi pulls up multiple windows, highlighting connections. And here's where it gets really interesting. These skims match exactly with the shortfalls in your accounts. Elena watches Dante's expression darken as he processes the information. The morning light catches the tension in his shoulders as he leans over Vivi's shoulder, examining the evidence. At 10:30 a.m., Vivi straightens suddenly. Got something. She pulls up an email chain. Someone using the codename L created the debt note that trapped Ramon. They specifically flagged Elena as potential leverage. Show me the access patterns, Dante commands, his voice tight. Vivi types rapidly, bringing up more data. Whoever this is, they had deep access. Internal systems, account codes, everything. Dante's jaw tightens. Only one person inside has that level of clearance. He meets Elena's eyes. My cousin Luca. Elena remembers seeing Luca at family gatherings she'd glimpsed through the bodega window, always dressed expensively, always smiling, always watching. You're sure? She asks quietly. He's the only one with both the access and the motivation. Dante's voice carries controlled fury. He's always resented my position, blamed me for decisions our fathers made. By noon, Elena heads to her composition class, now with 4 guards instead of 2. The increased security is subtle but present. 1 in the hallway, 1 outside the window, 2 in the classroom, posing as students. She texts Rosa during a break. Safe but weathering a storm. Will explain when I can. Her friend's response is immediate. Here if you need me, stay dry. The class focuses on chord progressions, and Elena loses herself in the familiar patterns of music theory, letting the mathematics of harmony distract her from the weight of surveillance and betrayal. At 3 p.m., she returns to find Dante in his office, maps and documents spread across his desk. He outlines his strategy carefully. We'll use the card's evidence to dismantle Alvarado's pipeline legally, he explains. Clean attorney, proper channels. Meanwhile, we confirm Luca's involvement quietly. He can't know we're onto him yet. Elena studies the careful plans, the measured approach. Always control, always precision with him. As evening settles over the city, Elena makes her decision. She finds Dante in his room, reading reports. Standing in his doorway, she speaks clearly, deliberately. I want you, she says simply. Not because I have to, not because of the contract, because I choose to. Dante looks up, his eyes intense. He sets aside his papers and gives her his full attention. Are you absolutely sure? He asks, voice careful. Right now? Yes. Are you sober, completely clear-headed? Yes. He stands, moving closer but not touching. Are you choosing me? Not safety, not protection. Me? Elena meets his gaze steadily. Yes, I'm choosing you, Dante. What happens next remains private, behind closed doors, but afterward, they share quiet moments of care and connection. Elena wears his black dress shirt, laughing when her playlist accidentally switches to death metal during a tender moment. Dante brings water, makes sure she's comfortable, thanks her repeatedly for trusting him. Thank you for waiting, she replies softly, for letting me choose. Near 2 a.m., they lie together in his bed, both doors finally closed. The city glitters beyond the windows, a carpet of stars and streetlights. Under the lowest key of the baby grand piano, Vivi's encrypted copy of the SD card waits safely hidden, their insurance against whatever storm comes next. Elena drifts off to sleep, listening to Dante's steady heartbeat, feeling for the first time, since this began, truly safe, truly chosen. His arm curves protectively around her waist, his breathing deep and even. In sleep, his face loses its careful control, softening into something almost peaceful. The night wraps around them like a blanket, the penthouse quiet except for the distant hum of the city. Security cameras keep their silent watch. Guards patrol the perimeter, but here in this room, in this moment, there is only rest and trust, and the gentle rhythm of shared breaths. Tomorrow will bring its challenges. Luca's betrayal to confirm, Alvarado's threats to counter, evidence to protect. But for now, they sleep, finding refuge in each other's presence, in the choice they've made together. Sunlight streamed across tangled sheets as Elena blinked awake at 7:30 a.m. The city stretched beyond the windows, already alive with morning traffic and glinting glass. She slipped from bed, padding to the kitchen in bare feet and one of Dante's shirts. The familiar ritual of making coffee grounded her. She measured beans, inhaling their rich scent, and watched the morning light paint shadows across the counter. Last night felt like a dream, but the pleasant ache in her muscles confirmed its reality. Dante appeared as she poured 2 cups, wearing black slacks and an unbuttoned dress shirt. His smile was soft, unguarded, a rare sight that made her heart skip. But as he accepted the coffee, his expression shifted to business mode. We need to review today's plan, he said, taking a sip. Vivi will deliver a cleaned data packet to Marisol Clark by noon. She's my attorney, ruthlessly ethical and expert at asset seizures. Elena nodded, leaning against the counter. And my schedule. 1 class only. We'll vary your route to spot any new surveillance. His fingers drummed once on the marble. Rosa will meet you briefly in the bathroom. 5 minutes max. She needs to verify your safety herself, but we keep the circle tight. Elena understood. Rosa was protective, would need to see her face to believe she was okay. And the rest of the intel work? Continues in parallel. Marco's team is mapping Alvarado's local holdings while Vivi builds the money trail. He moved closer, not quite touching. How are you feeling about all this? Focused, Elena answered honestly. Better equipped to handle it than when this started. At 11 a.m., Elena sat in her usual spot in the lecture hall, pretending to take notes while scanning reflections in the windows. Marco sat 3 rows back, appearing bored but vigilant. The bathroom meetup with Rosa was quick but intense. Her friend grabbed her in a fierce hug. You okay? Really okay? I'm safe, Elena assured her. It's complicated, but I'm choosing to be there. Rosa's face turned serious. Listen, a man came by the cafe yesterday asking weird questions. Wanted to know if you were promised to some king or something. Ice slid down Elena's spine. The bride rumor was spreading, exactly as Dante feared. Thank you for telling me, Elena managed. Stay safe, okay? Don't engage if anyone else asks. Marco appeared at her elbow as she left the bathroom, expression tight. 2 watchers on the quad were taking the library exit. They wound through stacks of books, down a service stairwell, and out through receiving where a different car waited. Elena's heart pounded, but her hands stayed steady. Back at the penthouse by mid-afternoon, she found Dante reviewing surveillance photos at his desk. Confirmation, he said without preamble. Luca met an Alvarado lieutenant twice last month. Private room at Marcello's. Elena sank into a chair. So it's real, the betrayal. Yes, his voice was cold. My own blood sold you into their crosshairs. What's our next move? We wait until Marisol's packet triggers the asset seizures. Cut off Alvarado's liquidity first. It's the best way to protect you. He rubbed his temples. Luca won't expect a legal attack. He'll be watching for muscle. Evening settled over the city as Elena sat at the piano, working on a new composition. The melody was darker than her usual style, minor chords, speaking of danger and determination. Dante read through ledger printouts nearby, occasionally glancing up at her with soft eyes. The familiar routine felt almost normal until midnight, when Elena's phone buzzed with an anonymous link. Her stomach clenched as she opened it. The video was grainy, security camera quality. It showed Dante in what looked like a warehouse, speaking to a well-dressed man. The audio was garbled but clear enough. Discussions of a trade, peace between families, a bride price. Elena watched it twice, her hands growing cold. Looking at Dante's face, she saw fury and recognition dawn. It's doctored, he said immediately. That meeting was about territory lines 6 months ago. I need air, Elena managed, standing. Please, call Vivi, check the metadata. She walked to the balcony on shaking legs as Dante made the call. The night air helped clear her head as she gripped the railing. Behind her, she heard Dante's voice grow sharp. Full forensic analysis. I want to know every edit point, every source file. The city sprawled below, a maze of lights and shadows. Elena forced herself to breathe deeply, to think logically. The timing was too perfect. The video arriving just as they'd found proof of Luca's meetings, just as she and Dante had grown closer. She heard Dante step onto the balcony but maintained distance, respecting her space even now. Vivi's starting the analysis. She'll trace the upload source too. Elena nodded without turning. The timing isn't coincidental. No, they're trying to break your trust, create doubt. His voice was carefully neutral. Are they succeeding? Now she did turn, meeting his eyes. I trust actions more than edited videos. You've proven yourself with every choice, every boundary respected. Relief flickered across his face, quickly masked. Beyond the balcony, a police siren wailed in the distance. Security lights swept the neighboring buildings in steady patterns while the city hummed below, unaware of the private wars being waged in its shadows. It's definitely spliced, Vivi announced, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The blue light from her laptop cast shadows under her eyes. Look at these frame transitions! Someone took footage from your office security feed and stitched it with external audio. Dante's jaw clenched as he leaned over her shoulder. Internal access. Has to be. These cameras are on a closed circuit. Vivi highlighted sections of code. The original meeting was about territory lines, just like you said. Someone... Luca, Dante cut in, voice like steel. Lifted the footage and edited it to make it look like a bride negotiation. Vivi glanced at Elena. The audio's been heavily processed too. I can prove it's fake in court. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, processing. The betrayal went deeper than money. Luca had access to everything, had been planning this for months. Dante turned to her, controlled fury in every line of his body. We need to move you to a safe house, now, while we drag him into the light. Elena nodded, heading to her room to pack essentials. Her hand stayed steady as she grabbed her passport, phone, and a change of clothes. The city lights through her window seemed colder now, hiding threats in every shadow. At 1 a.m., as she zipped her bag, the overhead lights flickered once, twice. Then the fire alarm began its piercing wail. False alarm, Marco called from the hallway. But, he cut off, watching the security feed on his tablet. 3 hostels, service door, 42nd floor. Dante appeared in the doorway, gun already drawn. Elena, panic room route now. Marco and I will flank the stairwell. She didn't argue, grabbing, her bag and moving. The route was muscle memory after all their drills, left at the kitchen, through the library, past the service elevator. A figure in black appeared at the corridor junction, raising something that hissed white vapor. Elena's lungs burned as Marco shoved her hard through a side door, coughing, "Run!" before crumpling. More hands grabbed her from behind. Elena drove her elbow back like Dante had shown her, connecting with something solid. She fought dirty, biting, scratching, remembering to tap her panic band twice as they tried to restrain her. Her shoe caught on something as they lifted her, and she had a moment of crystal clarity. The SD card copy was in her pocket. As they hauled her backward, she kicked the shoe off, watching it bounce under a bench. Let them think it was just panic movement. Rough fabric covered her head, cutting off her air. She counted breaths like Dante taught her as they carried her down, trying to track their path. Service elevator, she thought. The motion felt wrong for stairs. Then the night air hit her skin as they emerged into what had to be the garage. She heard car doors, felt herself being shoved inside. Gunshots cracked, Dante's voice shouting her name. The van peeled out, tires screaming, more shots, but carefully placed. He wouldn't risk hitting her. Elena forced herself to stay present as they drove, marking every turn despite the hood. Right, straight for 6 minutes, left, over what felt like the Morrison Bridge based on the vibration pattern. Her wrists burned from the zip ties, but she kept her breathing steady. The van stopped after what she estimated was about 30 minutes. More rough handling as they moved her inside somewhere that smelled of river water and rust. A warehouse, she guessed, based on the echoing footsteps. They sat her in a bolted chair, leaving the hood on. Elena focused on her training. Assess exits by sound, note guard rotations, stay calm. Panic was the enemy. She could almost hear Dante's voice. Fear is natural, let it sharpen you, not own you. Across the city, in his darkened office, Dante stood perfectly still. The security feeds played on multiple screens, showing the precision of the attack. The false alarm, the gas, the coordinated extraction. His cousin's fingerprints were all over it. He pressed a button on his desk. Call every captain. Now. Within minutes, his screen filled with faces, the heads of every family operation in the city. Some looked sleepy, others alarmed at the emergency summons. Luca has betrayed us, Dante said without preamble, his voice arctic. He sold information to Alvarado, created false debts, and has now taken Elena Reyes. Mutters of shock and anger filled the audio. Luca was family. This violated every code. As of now, all roads, docks, and bridges are locked down. Nothing moves without our eyes on it. I want every warehouse, every safe house, every property with river access checked. He leaned forward, letting them see the promise of violence in his eyes. If anyone aids him, if anyone stands between me and her return, I will burn every asset they own. There will be nowhere left to hide. The captains nodded grimly. They knew this wasn't hyperbole. Dante had built his reputation on precise, controlled power. But this was personal. Send your best people, he continued. Marco's injured, but alive. He'll coordinate from here. Vivi's tracing the van's route. I want updates every 15 minutes. One by one, the faces disappeared as they moved to execute his orders. Dante stood alone in the dark office, staring at the city beyond his window. Somewhere out there, Elena was counting on him to find her. She'd fought smart, leaving the shoe, using her panic band, staying clear-headed enough to track the route. His phone buzzed with the first reports coming in, teams deploying, checkpoints establishing, networks activating. The city was locking down like a vault. In the warehouse room, Elena focused on her breathing, on staying sharp. She'd seen Dante's controlled fury before, but this would be different. This would be surgical and absolute. She flexed her wrists against the zip ties, testing their give, and waited. At 3 a.m., the penthouse transformed into a war room. Screens lined the conference table, displaying river routes and warehouse districts in harsh blue light. Dante stood at the head, his jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled to expose forearms corded with tension. Marco's stable, Leah reported, her voice clipped and professional. Doctors got him sedated. The gas was military grade, but he'll recover. Dante nodded once. You're acting chief of security. Take command. She accepted with a sharp nod, already coordinating through her earpiece. Teams 2 and 4, lock down the mother's building. I want a 3-block buffer zone. At a side table, Vivi hunched over 3 laptops, her fingers flying. Got 2 pings from Elena's panic band. First one here. She pointed to a spot near Morrison Bridge. Second one, 5 minutes later, closer to the industrial district, then nothing. They found it, Dante said flatly. But she was conscious enough to trigger it twice. Show me warehouse properties in that radius. Across the city, Elena woke with a gasp in a bare room that smelled of river salt and diesel. Her head throbbed where they'd struck her. Focus, she thought. Assets and obstacles. Her hands were zip-tied behind the bolted chair, but her fingers found a sharp metal bracket underneath. Some kind of mounting plate with an edge. She began working the plastic against it, slow and steady. Footsteps approached. A guard entered with a paper cup of water. Elena kept her eyes down, playing dazed, then deliberately fumbled when he held it to her lips. Water spilled down her front. Clumsy bitch, he muttered, but didn't strike her. They needed her presentable then. She logged that. Back in the penthouse, Vivi's systems pinged. Boss, found something. There's a venue rental in the Dockyard District, high-end place called River's Edge. Someone just put in a rush order for white flowers, champagne setup. The works. Show me, Dante commanded. Security footage appeared on the main screen. Delivery vans arriving, workers setting up chairs facing a waterfront arch. A wedding, Leah said, or something meant to look like one. Alvarado's showing dominance through spectacle, Dante said. He'll parade Elena as a willing bride to cement his position, make the transfer look legitimate. Guest arrivals scheduled for noon, Vivi reported. Dante's expression hardened to granite. Leah, I want 4 men. Our best. Small team. Surgical insertion. The rest hold the perimeter and protect the mother. Vivi, get those accounts frozen the second the banks open. Hit them everywhere at once. In the warehouse, Elena worked steadily at the zip tie, feeling it weaken strand by strand. The wet denim of her jeans provided cover. Whenever she needed to adjust position, she could blame discomfort from the spilled water. She heard voices outside her door, fragments about a ceremony, about making an example. Her fingers never stopped working the plastic against the bracket. Dawn crept in through high windows. Elena's wrists were raw, but the zip tie was almost through. She forced herself to pause whenever footsteps passed, playing the docile captive. At the penthouse, Dante armed himself with methodical precision. Shoulder holster, ankle backup, tactical knife. Each weapon, an extension of his contained fury. Marisol's ready with the filings, Vivi reported. The second market's open, she'll freeze everything tied to those shell companies. Good. Dante checked his watch. Leah, you have full authority here. If anyone breaks perimeter, they don't get back up, she finished. He selected his team, 4 men he'd personally trained who understood surgical precision over brute force. They moved out in unmarked vehicles, taking separate routes to the dockyard. In her holding room, Elena felt the zip tie's final strands giving way. She kept her hands positioned as if still bound, waiting. Voices filtered through her door. Something about a white dress. Her lip curled. Let them play their symbolic games. She wasn't anyone's prop. By 11:30, Dante and his team were in position on a rooftop overlooking River's Edge. The venue gleamed with fresh paint and white chairs. A waterfront arch dripped with roses. The performance of legitimacy. Through his scope, Dante spotted Luca in a silver suit, preening as he spoke with a hard-faced man in cartel colors. His cousin's betrayal was a blade of ice in his gut, but he kept his fury controlled. Precision would get Elena back. Rage would get her killed. Target confirmed, one of his men murmured. Alvarado's lieutenant, northwest corner. Dante shifted his scope. The lieutenant was doing a poor job of concealing his weapon. Beneath his jacket, amateur. These were men who relied on spectacle over skill. At 11:45, Elena felt the final strand of the zip tie snap. She kept her hands carefully positioned, maintaining the illusion of helplessness. They'd put her in a white slip, a mockery of a wedding dress. She'd deliberately torn the hem, ensuring she could run when the moment came. Through her window, she heard cars arriving. The ceremony would begin soon. She closed her eyes, steadied her breathing, and waited. All she needed was one clean chance. On the rooftop, Dante watched the final preparations through his scope. Guests arriving, security positioning, every detail feeding into his assault plan. He'd built his empire on control, on precise application of force. But seeing Luca there, smiling as he prepared to trade Elena like currency, that control was a blade's edge away from shattering. The quartet's strings hummed discordantly as they warmed up, the music floating through River's Edge like a warning, each note a stretched wire of tension. Dante checked his watch. 11:58 a.m. 6 hours since Elena was taken. 6 hours of calculated restraint, of fury locked behind the iron door of his control. His earpiece crackled with Vivi's voice, crisp and efficient through the static. Cameras looping in 3, 2, 1, mark. You've got 7 minutes of clean footage. After that, you're visible again, so move fast. Dante moved like a shadow along the building's edge, his dark suit blending with the deeper shadows of the ornate architecture. Inside, champagne flutes clinked against each other, voices murmured in affected pleasure, a celebration of theft dressed as tradition. The sound made his jaw clench, so much pretense covering the ugliness beneath. Radio frequencies jammed, Leah confirmed in his ear, her voice steady as always. 10-minute window starts now. Strike teams are in position at the north and east exits if you need backup. He slipped through a service entrance, weapon ready, but contained beneath his jacket. The suppressor gleamed dully in the half-light as he checked it once more. His knife sat cold against his ribs, a reassuring weight. Every step measured, every breath controlled, his body a finely tuned instrument of focused intent. The corridor stretched before him, empty for now. In her holding room, Elena's fingers trembled as the final strand of zip tie gave way beneath the jagged edge of metal she'd worked loose from the chair. Blood trickled from her raw wrists, warm and sticky, but she kept her hands positioned behind her, maintaining the illusion of restraint. The plastic scratched as she tucked it beneath the chair, hiding the evidence of her escape. 12:03 p.m. The guard shifted his weight from foot to foot, bored and restless, checking his phone when he thought no one was watching. His radio crackled and spit, Leah's interference creating gaps in their communication network. When he turned away to adjust the frequency, cursing under his breath, Elena moved. Her bare feet made no sound on the concrete floor, toes curling against the cold. The torn slip whispered around her legs like a ghost as she slipped into the hallway, heart hammering against her ribs. The quartet's tuning grew louder, Beethoven's wedding march. How fitting for this mockery of ceremony. She moved toward the music with careful steps. They wouldn't risk shooting into a crowd of witnesses. Wealthy witnesses with connections. In this at least, their greed worked in her favor. Dante cleared the first floor systematically, checking angles, marking exits, cataloging threats with the precision of a man who'd done this countless times. At 12:06, he spotted Luca on the mezzanine, raising a crystal flute in practice charm, his silver suit catching the light as he laughed with elderly men whose hands were clean but souls were stained. Dante's finger tensed on the trigger, then relaxed. Too many civilians. Too messy. This required precision, not the satisfaction he craved. He ghosted down toward the preparation rooms, following instinct and experience. A bride would be kept close to make her entrance dramatic. 2 guards passed, speaking rapidly into dead radios, frustration evident in their sharp gestures. Dante pressed into an alcove, became part of the shadows, let them pass without ever knowing death had brushed their shoulders. Elena's heart thundered as she navigated the corridors, following the faint sound of music like a lifeline. The satin of her slip clung to her skin, damp with fierce sweat. The music grew closer, the notes more distinct. Just a few more turns and... She rounded a corner and collided with a solid chest. Strong hands steadied her before she could fall, fingers curling protectively around her upper arms. She knew those hands, knew that touch. Dante. Relief flooded through her, making her knees weak. In one fluid motion, he pulled her behind him, shielding her with his body. Their eyes met for just a fraction of a second. No words, just understanding. They moved as one unit toward the nearest exit, his weapon never wavering from their path, his body a living shield between her and danger. "The bride belongs to the Alliance!" Luca's voice rang out from above, cutting through the murmur of conversation. "Seal the doors! The Costello girl is escaping!" Men converged from multiple directions, their dark suits identical, their movements practiced. Dante's movements became precise, economical, deadly in their restraint. An elbow to a throat here, crushing a windpipe. A knee strike there, shattering a patella. No wild shots, no spraying bullets that might hit Elena. Each impact calculated to disable, without escalating the situation into a firefight that would endanger her further. Elena stayed tight to his back, matching his steps as he'd taught her during those long practice sessions she'd once thought were just his overprotectiveness. When a guard lunged from her side, she kicked his knee, just like in their training sessions, feeling the sickening give as something tore inside the joint. Dante finished him with a sharp strike to the temple that dropped the man like a stone. 12:12 p.m. They were almost at the service door, freedom just beyond, when Luca appeared, 2 armed men flanking him. His silver suit gleamed under the reception lights, his face twisted with thwarted ambition. "Come now, cousin." Luca spread his hands in a gesture of false reasonableness. "One woman for peace between families, a fair trade. You know how this works. Some sacrifices are necessary." Dante's voice carried like steel across marble, low but cutting through the chaos. Peace bought with betrayal rots from within. She's not a debt to settle. She's my choice, my future. The last words carried a weight that made even Luca flinch. He moved faster than Elena could track, a blur of lethal precision. One guard's weapon clattered away across the floor, wrist broken. The other dropped, clutching his throat, gasping for air through a crushed larynx. Luca stumbled back, eyes wide with real fear now, the mask of confidence slipping to reveal the coward beneath. But Dante didn't pursue, didn't end him. Let him run, into the net of legal consequences already falling into place, thanks to Vivi's digital trail of evidence. A death more complete than bullets could deliver. Reputation destroyed, assets seized, allies turning to enemies. They burst through the service door at 12:20 p.m., the heavy metal clanging shut behind them. The maintenance tunnel stretched ahead, damp and dark, emergency lights casting long shadows on concrete walls. Their footsteps echoed as they ran, Elena's bare feet silent next to Dante's measured strides. Water dripped somewhere ahead, a steady plink against stone. The tunnel sloped down toward the river, the air growing cooler, damper with each step. Ahead, gray light filtered through a grate, promising escape. They could hear the water lapping against stone, smell the brackish river air mixed with diesel and seaweed. Vivi's voice crackled in Dante's ear, accompanied by the rapid clicking of keys. Skiff is in position south side of Pier 3. You've got about 90 seconds before they figure out where that tunnel lets out. Leah's team is creating a diversion at the north exit. They think you're heading for the highway. They reached the grate. Dante made quick work of the lock with his knife, the metal giving way beneath practiced hands. The grate groaned in protest as they pushed through, rust flaking off onto their clothes. There, bobbing gently against the pier's shadow, was a sleek black skiff, low to the water and nearly invisible against the dark river. Elena climbed in first, wincing as her cut feet found purchase on the wet surface. Dante followed right behind her, his movements never losing their fluid grace even in haste. The engine purred to life at his touch, a quiet hum rather than a roar. Above them, sirens began to wail, their urgent cry cutting through the afternoon air. Shouts echoed from the tunnel, growing closer. But they were already moving, sliding under the pier's shelter like a water snake, hidden from eyes above by weathered wood and shadows. Elena pressed against Dante's side as he guided the boat through the forest of barnacle-covered pillars. Her torn slip clung to her legs, wet from the river spray and darkened with blood from her ankles. Her wrists stung where the zip ties had cut them, red bracelets of pain that throbbed with each heartbeat. But she was free. She was with him, solid and real beside her. And behind them, justice was already in motion, Vivi's carefully planted evidence making its way to authorities who couldn't be bought, more devastating than any bullet could be. Sometimes survival wasn't about who could hit hardest, but who could plan furthest ahead. The skiff emerged from beneath the pier, cutting cleanly through the choppy water. The sirens faded behind them, lost in the sound of waves slapping against the hull and wind whipping their hair and their own measured breathing, synchronizing without thought as they put distance between themselves and the trap that had failed to hold them. The skiff cut through choppy water, spray misting Elena's face as Dante guided them toward an abandoned ferry stop. The weathered dock emerged from the fog at 12:50 p.m., where Leah's familiar silhouette waited beside a black SUV. The moment they docked, Leah moved with practiced efficiency, helping Elena from the boat while scanning the shoreline. "Clean perimeter," Leah reported, wrapping a thick wool coat around Elena's shoulders. "No tails." Elena's hands shook slightly as she accepted a bottle of water. The torn slip clung to her legs, damp from river spray and sweat. Inside the SUV's warmth, she took measured breaths and began detailing the abduction. "The gas came first through the service corridor. Marco pushed me clear but went down." Her voice stayed steady as she described each moment. 4 men total. They knew the building layout, used the service elevator to avoid cameras. I managed to hit the panic band twice and hide the shoe before they bagged me. Dante listened intently, his jaw tightening at each security breach she identified. "The service door shouldn't have been accessible," he said. "Luca must have copied the override codes." "They coordinated with the false fire alarm," Elena continued. "Used the chaos to mask their entry points." "I'm sorry," Dante said quietly. "The breach was my responsibility. It won't happen again." By 1:30 p.m., they reached the penthouse. Vivi hunched over her laptop at the kitchen island, face lit by multiple screens. "Got it," she announced as they entered. "The trade video? Definitely Luca's work. Found his digital fingerprints all over it. He spliced footage from 3 different security feeds, changed the audio." Elena's phone buzzed with a message from Marisol. "Federal. Seizures executed at 1 p.m., Alvarado accounts frozen, shell company in L's name identified and locked, assets and holding pending investigation. We need to retrieve the backup, Elena said, thinking of the hidden SD card. Leah nodded. I'll escort you. They took the service stairs to where Elena had kicked off her shoe during the abduction. The black flat still lay partially hidden under the bench, exactly where she'd left it. Elena retrieved it carefully, feeling the reassuring weight of the SD card in its modified lining. Back in the penthouse, they had barely secured the card when alerts lit up the security feeds. Alvarado's desperate countermove came right on schedule. A strike team at Elena's mother's building. Elena's heart jumped, but Leah's team was ready. The moment hostile vehicles approached, automated protocols activated. Steel shutters dropped over windows. Reinforced doors locked. Silent alarms triggered. Through the cameras, Elena watched it unfold like a well-rehearsed dance. Police units, positioned based on Marisol's anonymous tip, converged within minutes. The would-be attackers found themselves caught between hardened defenses and waiting law enforcement. All civilians secure, Leah reported crisply. 6 hostiles in custody with unregistered weapons. Elena exhaled slowly. One threat neutralized. At 7 p.m., the second wave hit. The penthouse lights died suddenly, plunging them into darkness. Elena's training kicked in instantly. She hit her panic band, then moved to the control panel by muscle memory. 3 quick keystrokes activated the emergency light sequence, strobes designed to disorient attackers while giving defenders who knew the pattern an advantage. Elena counted steadily. 1, 2, 3. At 30, she ran. Not blindly, but along the exact path she'd practiced dozens of times. Leah flanked her as they moved to the panic room. Behind them, precise bursts of gunfire mixed with the sounds of close combat. Elena sealed the panic room door at 7:03 p.m. Through the security feeds, she watched Dante's team work with surgical precision. No wasted movements, no wild shots, just controlled, overwhelming force. By 7:18 p.m., silence fell. The all-clear signal flashed on the monitors. Elena emerged to find Dante waiting, a cut above his eye, leaving a trail of blood down his cheek. But his stance was steady, his eyes clear and fixed on her. Glass crunched under her feet as she crossed to him. The penthouse bore the scars of battle. Broken windows, bullet-scarred walls, overturned furniture. But none of that mattered. I believe you, Elena said firmly, holding his gaze. That video was a lie. It can't erase what we've built, what I know about you now. Elena. His voice held a rough edge. I choose you, she continued. Not because I have to. Not because of any debt or deal. I choose you because I know who you are. Dante's hands came up to cup her face, infinitely gentle despite the gunpowder residue still, marking his skin. You were never a debt to me, he vowed, voice low and fierce. Never a pawn or a playing piece. Everything I am, everything I have, will be spent proving that to you in full daylight. No more shadows. His thumbs brushed her cheeks, and Elena leaned into his touch, feeling the strength and tenderness in his calloused fingers. Around them, teams began clearing debris and securing the perimeter, but in that moment, they were alone in their own pocket of stillness, built on truth and choice rather than obligation. Sunlight streamed through the foundation's tall windows, catching dust motes as they danced above the polished hardwood floor. Elena stood at the baby grand, reviewing final notes with the youth orchestra as they prepared for the Moretti Music Foundation's launch. The banner above them proclaimed their mission in elegant script. Music changes lives. Below, smaller logos marked their sponsors, legitimate businesses that Elena knew represented Dante's transformed empire. Perfect timing on that crescendo, she told a young violinist who beamed with pride. Remember to watch for my cue on the transition. Rosa bustled past with a tray of pastries, pausing to adjust a centerpiece. The caterers are all set up in the back. We've got enough food to feed half the neighborhood. That's the idea, Elena smiled, watching her mother arrange white lilies with steady hands. 6 months of therapy and proper medication had worked wonders. The haunted look was gone from her eyes, replaced by purpose. The foundation occupied a renovated theater in their old neighborhood, its Art Deco facade restored to former glory. Inside, practice rooms lined the halls, each equipped with quality instruments. After-school programs would provide safe spaces and skilled instruction to local kids, breaking cycles of violence with music. Elena checked her phone. A message from Marisol. All paperwork filed for the summer scholarship program. P.S. Luca's plea deal is holding firm. 3 more Alvarado lieutenants named this week. The news of Luca's arrest 3 months ago had barely made headlines. Just another white-collar criminal caught in a financial dragnet. But Elena knew the true weight of those carefully crafted RICO charges, built from evidence on that hidden SD card. Marisol's legal strategy had worked perfectly, using money trails to dismantle empires instead of bullets. With Alvarado's organization splintered and their accounts frozen, the old power structure had crumbled. Dante seized the opportunity to reorganize, shifting resources toward legitimate ventures while maintaining enough muscle to protect what mattered. The transition wasn't always smooth, but it was working. 5 minutes, Rosa called out, shooing musicians toward the reception area. Elena gathered her sheet music, fingers brushing the locket at her throat. She'd emptied out the SD card months ago, replacing cold evidence with something warmer, the first bars. Of music she'd written the night she chose to kiss Dante, when fear gave way to trust. At noon, she changed into a simple white dress in the upstairs office. Her mother helped pin back her hair with tiny white flowers. "Are you happy?" her mother asked softly. Elena met her eyes in the mirror. "Yes," she said simply. "I chose this. All of it." The small chapel adjoining the foundation hall held only their closest circle, the people who'd earned their place through loyalty and truth. Leah stood alert, but smiling near the door. Vivi had traded her usual tech gear for a blue dress. Marisol sat beside Rosa, both women dabbing at their eyes. Dante waited at the altar, tall and controlled as ever, but his eyes held a warmth reserved only for her. His simple black suit bore no weapons today. Those were locked away, a symbol of their evolution from survival to life. They exchanged vows without pretense, their words weighted with shared battles and chosen trust. When Dante slid the simple band onto her finger, his touch was as careful as that first night when he'd refused to cross her boundaries. After the ceremony, they slipped away to the music room. The baby grand gleamed on its small stage, late afternoon light painting gold across its surface. Elena sat at the keys while Dante stored his gun in the chapel safe, a gesture of peace for this sanctuary they'd built. She began to play the piece that had lived in her heart since that storm-dark night when everything changed. The melody spoke of fear transformed to strength, of protection freely given, and trust hard-won. Dante listened with the same intensity he'd shown that first evening, understanding the language of notes that said what words couldn't. As day softened to twilight, their small gathering filled with quiet joy. They shared dinner at tables dressed with Elena's mother's flowers. Rosa's carefully chosen menu brought tastes of home. Couples swayed to gentle music while Vivi taught Leah's youngest nephew to dance. When the last guests departed, Dante led Elena back to the empty stage. City lights twinkled through the windows like earthbound stars. "The world out there will always test us," he said, his voice low and certain. "But I'll meet every challenge the same way I did at the dockyard, by choosing you, every time." Elena touched his face, feeling the strength and tenderness that defined him. "I know," she answered, "because I choose you too, every day." Later, in their penthouse, Elena stood at the balcony rail, watching their city spread out below. She held the deactivated panic band, no longer needed, but never forgotten. Inside, she placed it in a shadow box labeled with simple words, "We learned." Dante's arm slid around her waist, his touch unhurried and sure. She leaned back against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Without words, they turned toward their home, toward the life they'd chosen together. Behind them, moonlight caught the piano's polished lid, reflecting their joined hands as they closed the door on shadows and stepped into their shared light.